Today we're going to be learning Bava Metzia Daf Samach Zayin. Today's daf is sponsored by Caroline Ben Ari in honor of her father Ivan Rhodes, Yisrael Ben Meir of Sarah, on his 14th year at Side. Dad was a quiet, undemonstrative man who had a deep love for his family, strong values, and unimpeachable integrity. He also had a wicked sense of humor and was the king of puns. All dad jokes and bad puns sent to me today will be greatly appreciated. We're going to get started with the bottom of, a quick review of the bottom of Samach Bava Mebet. What we saw yesterday was Rav Nachman's approach to the Mishnah, where the Mishnah had given this case. If you said, in the event that you don't pay me back after 3 years, this land will be mine, and the land is worth way more than the loan. Well, that works. And Rav Nachman says, what are you talking about? That's a smachta. The Mishnah follows the beginning. That's a smachta. A smachta lo kanya, that doesn't work. And Rav Nachman first thought it did, and then he changes his mind. And then he says, not only does it not work, but you have to return all the payroll. Okay, meaning anything you ate on that field as the malveh has to be returned. So in other words, the 3 years come up, you say, okay, now this land is mine, and you start eating payroll. And by law, it's not really yours. So after the 3 years are up, the payroll that you eat have to be returned because they're not yours. Now, this is called mechila b'ta'ut because really the loved gave up on that. The loved thought that by law it was yours. When the loved finds out, oh, actually by law, it wasn't mine. I couldn't keep it. Well, that's what we call mechila b'ta'ut. So it sounds like Rav Nachman is saying mechila b'ta'ut doesn't work. That if you say, I'm okay with this, and then it turns out you were okay with it because that you thought it was the law and it turns out it wasn't, that's not mechila. To which they ask, is that really true? But when you sell perot dekel to someone, since the fruits of the tree don't exist yet, Rav Nachman actually holds that you can change your mind and renege on the deal for whenever you want, because it wasn't really a deal. But any payroll that we're eating, if you sold me the fruits of your tree and I ate the fruits, and then you change your mind and don't want to sell it to me, it turns out it was never a sale, I don't actually have to return the fruits. Now that seems to show mechila b'ta'ut is mechila. It works. So then the Gemara said, oh, there's a difference between a sale and a loan. In a sale, we can say it works. In a loan, we can't say it works because a loan, it has the look of rebate, of interest, because in the end, right, you're going to give me back the money, and I'm going to have eaten the payroll, and then I'm going to get my money back and the payroll, and that looks like rebate. But if it's a sale, it's okay. That's where we got up to. So now we're going to have a question. Rav is going to question Rav Nachman about the second part, about the sale. In a sale, it sounds like mechila b'ta'ut is mechila. If you say, I don't really care, right, then that you thought by law that was the case, so you let me have the fruits, and then I ate the fruits, well, I don't have to give them back because you gave in to me. So comes Rava. I'm a Rava. Rava said, now we're starting at the top of our page. I was sitting before Rav Nachman, and I wanted to question him from ona'ah, right? Overcharging. Aylonit. But he already anticipated my question and had a prepared answer from the aylonit. And now we're going to see what one has to do with the other and how these relate to our case. And the aylonit, if you remember, from Nashim, is a woman who never has simanim of maturity. She never reaches maturity. Age-wise, she does, but physically not. And it turns out, if you married a woman who turns out to be an aylonit, the marriage is not a valid marriage. Okay, and we're going to see all sorts of ramifications to that, and those are going to be relevant. Financial ramifications to the fact that this marriage is basically kind of like it never happened. We're going to see some things, and we're going to see how this connects. Hare ona'ah. Here comes the question of Rav. Now they're explaining it. Hare, or Rav is explaining. Hare ona'ah de mechila b'ta'uti v'lo havi mechila. Okay, what's ona'ah? You overcharge me. Now, I was willing to pay that price. So if we say mechila b'ta'ut, I thought by law you were deserving of that price. I didn't know I was overpaying. And then what do we say? I get my money back. So if I could get my money back, what do you see? Mechila b'ta'ut is not mechila. If we said it's mechila, like the fruits that you ate, that I ate from the tree that you sold me, and then you decided you really didn't want to sell it to me in the end. And remember, according to Rav Nachman, it was never a sale in the first place then because the payroll weren't in existence. So we say there, though, I get to keep the payroll. But why in ona'ah do we have to give back the extra money? Now, going back to the quote that Rava said, but Rav Nachman answered me back from aylonit. What was the case? In aylonit, gives up rights to certain things, and she loses those rights. It really is valid. She can't claim them back. So what is this? And that's basically Rav Nachman's proof. You want to question me from ona'ah, instead of answering why ona'ah is not a question, he basically says, but I'll prove it to you from aylonit. It's not the best answer because it doesn't really address the ona'ah issue, but don't worry, in the end, they're going to reject this whole, everything we're going to say. Titnan, hamima'enet v'ashniya v'aylonit. These are three women who basically their marriages can be dissolved. Okay, one is mima'enet. That's the woman who gets betrothed by a mother or brother when the father's not around anymore. And that's only a rabbinic marriage. She's a minor. And when she gets of age, she can say, I'm not interested in this marriage, and the marriage is dissolved like she was never married in the first place. Shnia is someone who marries an arayot by Rabbanit, by rabbinic law. We just read all the arayot on Shabbat, right? These are arayot that aren't written in the Torah, but are derived from the Torah as rabbinic laws. So forbidden relationships on a rabbinic level, and the aylonit. Okay, we're going to focus mainly on the aylonit, but all the same laws apply to all these people. So when the husband finds out she's an aylonit, basically she's out of the marriage is dissolved, and she loses all sorts of rights, like ein lahen, all these women, lo ketubah, they don't get the ketubah money. Now the ketubah money doesn't only mean the 200 zuz that the husband promises in the event of death or divorce. It also includes, and this is the real focus of what we're talking about, this and the payroll we're going to talk about in a minute. This includes items she brings in. Okay, let's just review. Woman brings in to the marriage different items that can belong to her. One is nichse malog, one is nichse tzom barzal. Nichse malog, I always remember, is heirlooms. Okay, they're used for property. It means she brings in things that belong to her, that were her family's. She brings them in. The husband can get proceeds. Let's say it's land. So the husband gets proceeds of the land. And it's not written up in the ketubah, by the way. And when she leaves the marriage, she gets them back as is. So if they went down in value, her loss. If they went up in value, her gain. Nichse tzom barzel are things that stay stable. What does that mean? It means that she brings them into the marriage. They're written down in the ketubah. Why are they written down in the ketubah? Because there are things like a dowry, gifts the family brings to the marriage, or things like that. She brings them in. She doesn't get them back as is. The husband commits to return them at their value they are today. So if they're worth $1,000, she'll get back $1,000. He doesn't give her back the item that went up or down in value. So if it goes up in value, the husband wins. If it goes down in value, the husband loses. And while they're married, the husband gets to enjoy the proceeds of it, right? Any benefits that come from that item. So now, she can't get, this is fascinating. It's actually difficult to fathom. If she's an aylonit and the marriage is dissolved, since it was a promise of the husband in the ketubah, and there's no ketubah in this case, so she doesn't get all that dowry money back. All those gifts that her family gave into the marriage, she was supposed to get back at the value they were in for, and he was just supposed to get proceeds. It's gone for her. Like, it's lost on her. Now, what do you see here? This is mechila b'ta'ut. She thought she was a regular woman. She didn't realize she didn't have simanei bagrut and the marriage was going to be off. So she gave them wholeheartedly, but it turns out it was a mistake because she wasn't really married. But it's too late. Like, family already gave the gifts and it's done. And she also doesn't get the payroll back, any proceeds that the husband ate off of her stuff, her nichse malog, for example. She doesn't get to take them back with her. He doesn't have to pay her back because it was as if they weren't married, right? Theoretically, they weren't ever married. He never had rights to those. But he doesn't have to give them back. Not mezonot, not palaot. These are two other things. This is the mezonot, or if she borrowed money, let's say she went away and she had no food and she borrowed money, the husband theoretically is supposed to pay back the money, but she took out a loan. He doesn't have to pay it back because he doesn't, and they weren't married. And lo blaot, if there were torn clothing that she brought into the marriage, and the nichse tzom barzal, she doesn't get the back of their value. She also doesn't get back the ripped clothing that are left. Velohi. But now we're going to say, so that would prove mechila b'ta'ud is mechila. So that's Rav Nachman's kind of support to what he said. But now the Gemara rejects everything we said so far today. Velohi. These two issues actually have no connection to our case. Lo ona'ah havyatiyuvte, you can't use ona'ah as a question, and lo aylonit meseyale. And aylonit can't be used as a proof. So basically, we're left with, where we were at the beginning, where Rav Nachman just states mechila b'ta'ud is mechila on a sale. It doesn't work in a loan, and done with it. We don't have a question on him. We don't have a support for him. Why not? Because each one is uniquely different than our case we were discussing. Lo ona'ah tiyuvte. The person didn't even know that when I overpaid, I had no idea I was overpaying. So when I agreed to give you this price, I agreed because I thought it was a reasonable price. It wasn't like I thought that you were deserving of a price that was I was being overcharged for. I didn't even know I was being overcharged. In the other case, for example, I know that I'm giving you the fruits, or you're giving me the fruits to eat, and you thought that by law they were coming to me, and turns out it was wrong. But in a case of ona'ah, it's not like you realized you were paying extra and you were willing to pay extra. There was no, because you thought that by law you had to, or something. It's just not a comparison. I didn't even know I was paying extra. There was mechila b'ta'ut means I knew there was something, but I thought that you were owed that. Here, it's not like I thought you were owed anything. I just thought I was paying a price, and it included this extra money, which I had no idea was even included. So that's not even a question, because it's not the same. Below aylonit mechila, and you can't use aylonit as a proof, because she is willing to give up on those fruits, the fruits and all the dowry money, even if she would have known she was in aylonit. Why? You've learned this many times in Nashim. Women, it's a status symbol to be married. She preferred to be married. She's willing to pay money to be married, basically. She's willing to give up her money of the dowry because she liked having that name that she was married. So therefore, it's not a mechila b'ta'ut. It's an intended mechila. And again, she didn't really know that she wasn't going to end up being married. But even if she had, she would have given up on it because she was happy to give the gifts to be married for this period of time. So again, hard to understand that exactly. And again, it seems very unfair that this woman would end up basically giving up this money she brought into the marriage. It seems it's like when you get engagement gifts and then break the engagement or something, right? It's a little bit of a weird situation. She brought it in to be married. It turned out she wasn't married, but the halacha is that really it stays. But this isn't connected with mechila b'ta'ud at all. Moving on. There was a woman. She asked an agent to basically go and purchase land from her relative. So the agent goes, he goes and buys this land from the relative. Now the relative says, I'm going to sell you this land because I need the money. But if I find money and I come into money, I'm going to buy it back, which basically means, and I'm selling you this land under condition that the land reverts back to me when I get the money. Now, what happens in that case? We talked about this already. Then what happens? It's like a loan, sort of, because what happens? She gets the land, he gets money, and in the end, she'll get money back and give the land back. That's kind of like a loan, right? A loan almost on collateral, right? It's kind of like the same idea, where she ends up giving him money, and over time, he gives her back money, and then she eats the payroll in the meantime, right? So in the end, it's a little bit of a tricky situation because it looks somewhat like interest. Anyway, he says, that's not really what we're focusing on right now, but we'll get back to that in a minute about the rebate. But basically he says, agree to me that if I get the money, that this is a sale on condition, that if I get the money, I'm going to buy this land back. Amar le, at v'navla achi. So he says to him, you and Navla could be her name, or it could be just any you and another person, okay? You and him, you and her. Either it's just like a general thing, or maybe it's really her name. Let's just say it's her name. Either way, it means the same thing. The messenger says, you and her, you're brothers. You'll work this out. Okay, they're not brothers, they're cousins, but what's the difference there? You'll work it out, okay? Meaning what? That's a good question. What does it mean? So did he agree to the condition or not agree to the condition? Now, it's not so important whether he agreed or not, because the relative is the one who's giving the land over, and it really matters what the relative was intending. So Amar Rabba Barav Huna Kol Apanavla Amar Sam Chadate Velo Gamaru Makne. When you use that term, oh, you guys will work it out because you're connected, or whatever, however you would say it, you guys will work it out. That basically means acceptance of the condition. In which case, if it was an acceptance of the condition, then the seller knew that they were selling it under condition, and that's what it means. Lo sam chadate velo gamar umakne. Okay, it should be lo sam chadate, I think, right? Sorry, sam chadate. It is sam chadate velo gamar umakne. What does this mean? They were somech on the acceptance of the other person, and basically said, I'm only giving this to you in the event that she commits to return it to me if I get the money, which means that he didn't fully pass over the land to her. It wasn't hers in ownership of 100% ownership. It was almost like a temporary sale. Now the question is, so arahadra. So clearly, if he gets the money and pays the woman back, he gets the land for sure, because that was part of it's really important what he thought. He never really, if the owner of an object never fully gives over the object, then it's not a sale. So he never fully gave it over, therefore the land goes back. But I told you we're going to get to the problem of the payrote then. What happens with the payrote then? Does she have to give back everything she ate? Because in the end, it wasn't hers from the beginning. Because he basically said, again, this turns into a loan. It's like she gave him money, got land as collateral, right? It's not exactly collateral, but it's kind of like that. She gives back the money over time. And in the end, he gives back the money. She ends up with her money, that he had the money over time. This is agarnata, right? It's harham tanat ma'ot. She gets now the money back, all her money, and she gets rebate because she ate produce. So the question is, does she have to return the payrote that she ate? Now, remember, there's a distinction between ribit tzutza and avak ribit. This was back to Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar said, if it's ribit by Torah law, she has to return it. Now here she took the payrote, she ate them already. Does she have to return them? If it's only rabbinic ribit, then she doesn't have to return them. So what do they say? Do we say, here's the question, ribit tzutza havu v'yotza b'dayanim. Since the whole arrangement in the beginning was potentially going to be a loan, and then maybe she couldn't eat the payrote by Torah law, then she has to give him back. O Dilma, ki avak ribit havi ve'en yotzim. Or maybe it's just avak ribit, and it's not taken away, it's just rabbinic law. Amar Rava bar Rav Huna, mistabra ki avak ribit havu ve'en yotzim b'dayanim. And Amar Rava, it should be Rava, according to the Bach, ki avak ribit havi ve'en yotzim b'dayanim. They both say what we would have thought. This is only rabbinic because it wasn't even clear it was a loan in the first place. It looked like a sale, which turned into a loan, but it wasn't really a loan in the first place. And it wasn't, we're going to see in a minute, also, it wasn't a set amount. We have no idea what the payrote are. Ribit tzutza means you say, I'm lending you 100, I'm getting back 110. That's ribit tzutza, that you would have to return the 10, but this isn't like that. So they both say this is ribit, avak ribit, only rabbinic. She doesn't have to return the payrote. So again, she bought the land, but in the end, it turned out retroactively to be a loan. All the payrote she had in the meantime, she keeps them. Amalei Abai Rabba. This is why the Bach thought that it was Rabba and not Rava, because Rava said this, and now Abaye has a response and says, not that he's disagreeing with him, but he says, remember I said this is kind of like taking land for collateral. So Abaye wants to know, and this is really going to be our topic for the rest of today, how does it work with a mashkanta? If you get a mashkon, land is collateral for a loan, can you eat the payrote? And if you did eat the payrote, and then it's like ribit, do you have to return them? Because is the ribit there ribit tzutza, which you have to return, or is it not ribit tzutza? Because again, if I loan you money for $100, I then use your property and you give me property as collateral, I get proceeds out of the property, right? I grow things, and then you give me back the $100, and in the meantime, I also got payrote, that's ribit. But do we say, hatamai mishum de lo katzle? The reason why it doesn't work in the case with the woman and her relative in the sale was because there was no set amount in the beginning of ribit. It wasn't set, she's going to get ribit of X amount. We had no idea. She could have grown things, she could have not grown things. It could have been a good year, it could have been a bad year. There was no set amount of what she was going to get of payrote. Hachinami lo katzle. Also in a mashkon, when you get as collateral, it's not clear how many payrote they're going to be. O dilma hatam zbine hachahal va'ar. Do we say, wait, the difference is that started off as a sale. Now, retroactively, it reverted to a loan. But that's just rabbinic because it really started as a sale. Here, in a mashkanta case, that's a loan. It started as a loan, and there's ribit there, and maybe that's a problem. So Amar Le, Rabba answers him, Hatam tama mai mishum de lo katzle, hachanami lo katzle. So basically, Rabba says, this is not ribit that goes back because there's no set amount. So any payrote don't have to go back. This, by the way, just to connect things, disagrees with Rav Nachman, who at the beginning of our daf said, when you said this is going to be yours after 3 years and the guy took the land, right, and ate the payrote have to be given back. Now, payrote have no set amount. So Rav Nachman would say, even if there's no set amount, you still have to give the payrote back. And Rava says, no, you do not. Amar Rav Pape, Avi Ravina Uvada, V'chashe v'apik peri de lo kirabba bar Rav Huna. Now, Rav Pape says that Ravina actually had a case and made them give back payrote from a mashkon that they were using from the land. So this is a different opinion, okay, a dissenting opinion, which goes more like Rav Nachman, that you do have to give back the payrote. Now we're going to this next section, it's a little bit complicated, but if you get this concept in the beginning, and I'll repeat it throughout so that you get it the second time or the third time, we're going to distinguish between loans that are given in two types of places where it doesn't matter what place, it's just that the general custom is different in each place. Okay, what are we talking about? We're talking about when you take a loan. So I lend you money and I take your land as collateral. Well, it's all about a mashkon today. I take your land as collateral. The question is, are we living in a place where the rules are that as soon as you pay back the land, you can demand back the mashkon? Okay, you get, as soon as you pay the loan back, you pay me the money, you can demand the mashkon back. Some people say, no matter what, there's a 12-month period where you can't, but we're talking about beyond that. Or some people say even from the beginning, maybe. The point being, let's not get caught up in the 12 months or not. That'll come up tomorrow. But the idea being that you can basically pay me back at any point and kick me off that land. Okay, so the collateral is very temporary for me. And the main point is, it means that I don't own it. I have no ownership rights to it. Now, it's a little bit tricky when we do that, because then why would I invest in this land? You could come back tomorrow and take the land away from me. So basically, that's called an atra de misalka. It's a place, lisalek is to kick off. It's a place where you could come at any point, pay the loan back, and kick me off the land. In atra de lo misalka is a place where you're not allowed to do that. It's a place where, let's say we take out a loan for 10 years. In 10 years, you can do it. But if you pay me back the loan after 3, I still have that land. And that land is mine for those 10 years of the loan, whether you pay me back the money or not. That land is mine. Now, what's the big difference here? The big difference is if the land is mine, I own it. Now, I own it temporarily. It's like I'm renting the land. Now, if you rent land, of course you can have all the proceeds. There's no interest here because my piece in this collateral, this land, is that it's mine. Okay? I own it. If I own it, then there's really no rebate problem at all. If I don't own it and it's your land and I'm taking proceeds and this is all based on a loan, then any fruits I have are interest. So the question really is going to be, how can we set up a situation where I can have land as collateral and I can eat payroll without it being an interest problem? Or, okay, we're going to talk about this. Is there a way to do it, particularly in a place where it's an atra de misalka, where you can kick me out so I don't own it? If I don't own it, well, then how can I eat payroll without it being interest? Because imagine, it's weird to have a collateral that you have land that you're holding as collateral and you can't even use it. It's a little bit strange. So Amar Bereid Rav Yosef Mishmei de Rava. Hamashkanta be'atra de misalka. This mashkon, so Mar, the son of Rav Yosef, says in the name of Rava. A mashkon in a place where the lovek can kick you out. Okay, basically, can kick me out. I gave you money, you could kick me out whenever you want. Achal shiur zuze misalkinale. I can eat produce and kick you out as soon as I've eaten enough produce that reaches the amount of the loan. If the loan was $1,000, I eat for $1,000 worth of produce, and then you could kick me off the land, basically. So you could kick me out as soon as, right, you keep a tally of all the produce I ate. You get to 1,000, you kick me out. Let's say you didn't kick me out at 1,000. Let's say I ate 1,250, and then you kick me out. Achal tfei, if I ate more than that, lo mafkina minei. When you kick me off the property, you can't get back the 250 extra. Why not? Because that's a vak ribit. And a vak ribit is an ayotza b'dayanim. Remember, we learned that. So the first part, and this is important to get so we understand Rav Ashi is going to disagree with this. The first part of the fruits that I eat, and the reason I can eat the fruits is because it's considered that I take that in place of payments of the loan. And I basically deduct. Every month, I deduct what you ate, what I ate, and when we get to the full amount, you kick me off the land. But if you didn't kick me off the land, anything I took more than that is basically rebate, but it's only a vak rebate because it wasn't set from the beginning. So a vak rebate, you can't demand back from me. And therefore, lo mechashvina mishtara l'shtara. If we had 2 loans, one was for 1,000 and one was for 250, let's say. So when I ate 1,250's worth, you can't say, oh, put the 250 toward the other loan, because the other loan wasn't connected to this land. The other loan was a totally separate loan. And since it's lo yotza b'dayanim, you can't demand that from me. It's done. It's gone already. That's mine. And you can't take it away from me. So we can't stick it onto a different loan and you say, oh, by the way, you already ate 250. That's going to cover my other loan. Can't do that. Ubediyatme, but with orphans, it's different. If you're an orphan on your father's property and your father died with this loan, your father gave me the loan as, right? If I gave your father a loan, your father gave me the land as collateral, and then the father died and left it to the child, right? That's it. You're the orphan. Now, in this case, if I ate, okay, so this is the same. I eat $1,000 worth, you're off, right? You could kick me off the land. That's the same. But a chaltve, if I ate more, mafkina mine. Now, why is that? It's a little bit tricky, but they say that the Beit Din functions as the father of the orphans. Now, Beit Din is clear law. That's before now, you didn't kick me off, so we could say it was mechila, like maybe mechila b'ta'ut. You should have paid attention. You missed it. Well, I already ate it. But if it's the Beit Din, there is no such thing as mechila of a Beit Din. A Beit Din isn't like, oh, I'm your friend, I'll just let it go. The Beit Din does justice. You weren't deserving of that money. Actually, it was like you never took it, and the court can actually demand it for the orphans. And therefore, one goes hand in hand. If the father had another loan of $250 and left it to the orphans, then we could just move this $250 onto there. But Amar Rav Ashi comes with the dissenting opinion, and he says the following. Since you say any more, we can't take away from you, meaning, right, we can't give it back to you if I ate more. He says, even in the beginning case, now, why can't we take it away from me? Because it's rebit, but it's avak rebit. Avak rebit, we can't, right, make someone pay back. But he says the whole thing, we're going to assume when I ate all the produce, and this, the Ritva says, is what we call an anansade. Anansade means we all testify. It's like as if everybody just knows it's a fact, which is what? When I'm eating, you give me your land for collateral, and I'm eating the fruits from the land, I'm not eating them to deduct the money for the loan. I'm eating them as rebate. I'm saying, okay, I gave you money. I'm benefiting. I'm getting extra benefit, which is I'm getting the produce. Since I did this all with the intent, so he says the following. Now that you said, when we view the second part, the extra 250 as rebate, as interest, if I ate produce of $1,000, the first $1,000, you can't kick me off unless you actually paid me $1,000 in cash. Because my eating the produce was not, I wasn't doing it to get to deduct the amount of the loan. I was doing it as interest. I was eating it to benefit as interest. Now, what do we say? What kind of rebate is this? It's a avak rebate. It's not real rebate of Torah law. It's a avak rebate because there was no set amount from the beginning of how much I was going to be eating. And therefore comes Rav Ashi and he says the whole $1,250 is all rebate. And it's a avak rebate, which means the court can't demand it back, which means I took it. Now, I shouldn't have. But the fact is they can't take it away from me. And since we're not using it as a deduction of your loan, well, you still have to pay me the $1,000. So I end up with $2,250, none of which, right, you can demand back from me. So that's Rav Ashi's position. My time. Why is that? He says, Siluke below zuze afuke minehu and have avak rebate. He says there is no such thing as getting a loan back without giving money. In other words, as I said, Anan Sadeh, we all testify the fact that when you took that produce you were taking, when I took it, I was taking it as rebate. I wanted to take interest. I wanted to benefit because I gave you money. I'm benefiting, right? Side benefit. And that's all avak rebate and avak rebate and ayot sabadayanim. And therefore, Rav Ashi disagrees. Okay, so he says if it's an atra de masalka, you can't still kick me off unless you actually pay me the money. And if I ate the produce, well, it was forbidden for me to do because of interest, but we can't take it away from me, and you still have to pay me the money of the loan. So we have these two different approaches. And not only that, but Avi Rav Ashi uvada be'yed tanim, he had a case where there were orphans even, where we said orphans, it's different, right? He thought orphans were exactly the same, kig dolim, and he treated them like dolim. We're now at the top of Amud Bet. He basically says, why are yatomim different? No different? Because there is no distinction between the part that was given as replacement of the loan and the extra. The whole thing is rebate. And since the whole thing is rebate and it's all only avak rebate, well, basically, there's no way for the judges to collect that back. When it was extra, and the first part we viewed as for the loan, and then they just took more, we say there was mechila, but there's no mechila when it comes to orphans. But mechila doesn't kick in here. This is just regular law of avak ribit that the judges can't take away. And therefore, he even thinks to the extreme that even orphans would have to pay in addition to having taken all this produce. Also, they would have to pay out of pocket to return the loan. I'm a Rava Bered Rav Yosef Mishmei de Rava. Okay, some people say this is Mar Bered Rav Yosef Mishmei de Rava, which is exactly the same person who was talking before. It'd be weird to say it's Rava, the son of Rav Yosef, in the name of Rava. But anyway, I think Rav Yosef does have a son named Rava, a different Rava. I don't remember. But anyway, whoever says this, Hi mashkanta ba'atra de misalke, lo nechol ela b'nachyata. Now we're going to come up with a way that you could take interest that would be allowed from. What do you do when you get a collateral? What they want to figure out is, if you get land as collateral, how can you eat the produce in a way that's permitted? And we're going to discuss this also today, also into tomorrow's daf, which is, again, we're talking now in a place where you can kick people off, meaning the borrower can say, okay, here's the money, get off my land. And this is the person who said, assuming, right, we're saying this in the name of Rava, that you can deduct, right? Not like Rav Ashi, you thought you couldn't. So by eating the parrot, you're deducting. Well, he said you can even do it like this. In a place where you kick people off the land when you pay the loan back, lo nechol ela b'nachyata. You can do it with this nachyata. What is nachyata? So linakot is to deduct, okay, which is I'm eating the fruits and I deduct. But this is a unique kind of way of deducting. This is a way where we say in the beginning, we're going to set an amount of parrot. Now, nobody knows how many parrot are going to grow in that field. It could be, right, the loan's for $1,000, let's say, could be the first year. There'll be $100 of produce. There'll be $200. There could be $500. There could be zero. Okay, nobody knows. It's an unknown. But we can make an arrangement that I loan you money, you give me your land, and I'm going to live in the land for 10 years. We're going to consider every year $100 toward paying back the loan. So if I live there 1 year and you give me $900, you could kick me off the land. But if you don't give me any cash, we keep going. Second year, it's 200. Third year, it's 300. And we just set a set amount. That's nachyata. Now, that means that I can eat, if it's more than $100 a year of produce, I can eat that without it being rebate, because that was our arrangement. So that's basically this chiddush of Rav, that you can do it with this nachyata. And then at the end of the daf, we'll get to why you could do this. I'm not sure if we'll even get this today, but we learned this from something called the Steach Huzah, and we'll talk about that later. And this actually comes from next week's parsha. Starts off with Kedoshim Tihiyu. And what do we say Kedoshim Tihiyu means? Sometimes you shouldn't do things even if they're allowed by the letter of the law. You should sanctify yourself even more beyond that. And they basically say a Talmid Chacham shouldn't do this because it looks like rebate. Because in the end, you're getting back $100 for every year, and you're deducting that. And you're also eating more payroll. So it looks like rebate, and if you're a Talmid Chacham, you should keep yourself to a higher standard. So then they say, well, okay, but b'may nechol. In other words, they can't fathom that you could have this land that you can't benefit from at all. So they say, so what is a Talmid Chacham going to do? To which they answer, b'kitzuta. They do it with kitzuta, which we don't yet know what that means. We're going to have to figure out. So they say, before they tell us what kitzuta means, and this is the way the Talmid Chacham can do it, and presumably anyone can do it this way, that only works if you permit kitzuta. But lamanda amar kitzuta asira, but there are those who say kitzuta is forbidden. How are you going to explain it? So we haven't even explained what kitzuta is, but we're already asking a question saying, well, this is only going to be a solution if you hold the kitzuta can work. Okay, let's understand what kitzuta is. First, they want to just tell us, just so you know, we're not just making this up, but there happens to be a big machloket. Is kitzuta allowed or is it not allowed? Itmar, it was said, kitzuta plige ba Rav Acha v'Rabina. Rav Acha and Rabbanit disagree about kitzuta. We don't know who says what. Chadam or kitzuta sharia, chadam or kitzuta asira. The commentaries have a way of figuring out who says what, but we're not going to get into that right now. It's not important for our purposes. One says kitzuta is allowed, one says kitzuta is not allowed. Hechidami kitzuta. So now finally, okay, we've been talking about this kitzuta, but we don't know what it is. So what is kitzuta? Now we're going to have two different interpretations. The first one, I will admit, is very difficult to understand, which is probably why there's a second interpretation. The first one is the amarle, and this means this way. If you say, now there's a machloket, whether you permit this or not, but if you say it's permitted, this is how the Talmidei Chachamim will be able to do a loan. The first option of kitzuta is this. I'm a Talmid Chacham. Okay, we have a loan, or you're a Talmid Chacham. You give me I give you a loan, you give me your land, or I don't know, I guess it doesn't matter who's the Talmid Chacham here, right? I guess it's me. I'm the Talmid Chacham. I'm the borrower. I get your land as collateral. How can I eat payroll? Well, I say, the first 5 years, I'm just going to eat payroll, which is why this is hard to understand. That looks like exactly repeat. It's very hard to understand. The first 5 years I can eat. After that, I'm going to calculate, I'm going to keep a tally of exact payroll, not nachyata, where we come up with fixed rate, which might be right, might be wrong, probably more likely wrong, and I'll end up eating more. But because usually they fix this rate that was kind of on the low side. But the first 5 years, I can eat whatever I want. After that, I calculate and I deduct exactly tit for tat. Okay, why this works is a good question. The commentators try to figure out. I'm going to leave it aside right now, and we're going to go with the second option. Ikeda Amre, some people say no. What it meant is, kol below nachyata asur. No, the second one said, what are you talking about? Some people say no. If you don't deduct at all, of course it's forbidden. That's ribit, which is what I was saying, right? That's very hard to understand. You're taking money without deducting anything. Of course that's interest. Aval hechidami kitsuta. What is kitsuta? Da amrle. In other words, the first option is basically saying there's no option to do nachyata. You can only deduct exactly amounts, but you get the first 5 years where you don't have to deduct anything, which is a little bit strange. The second option says we're going to distinguish first 5 years and second X number of years, whatever they are. But the first 5 years, ad chameshnin achilna benachyata. Even a Talmid Chacham can do nachyata for the first 5 years, but as long as the arrangement is that after 5 years, so I'm going to take off every year $100 off your loan, I'll use all the produce, whatever it ends up being. But after that, after that, I take an exact tally, and all the payroll I ate, could be then the loan will be back in 6 years, because if I have a very productive year that last year, $500 of produce, and you get the land. That's the second answer. So we have two options of kitsuta. So now we're going to go back to our question. So if you say kitsuta is forbidden, you can't do it in this way, because there's a machloket whether you could do it in this way or not. Well, how are you going to come up with a way that Talmidei Chachamim can collect interest? So in other words, not collect interest, use the property, use the land of the collateral, which they assume there must be some way they can do it. So now it really depends which version you take. If you say version number 1 was forbidden, then now version number 1 was much more difficult to say it was permitted, because remember, you're taking all the produce without deducting anything the first 5 years. If you say that's forbidden, then you probably say the second option is permitted. You would allow, though, if you said first 5 years nachyata, next 5 years or next whatever number of years by the value of the land. And then Talmidei Chachamim could do it in that way. So they can't do nachyata all the way. They could do nachyata for the first few years and then switch to exact value. Then you would have a way to do it. And that would be answer number 1. But if you take version 2, manda asar bebatraita, and this is machloket whether you could do kitsuta. So even option number 2 can't work. And of course, option number 1 can't work. So how are Talmidei Chachamim, what are they going to do when they get collateral and they want to eat the produce? Heichi shari lemechal, how are they going to eat? To which they give a new option. Okay, so we have, right? Option number 1 was just deduct the exact amount. Option number 2 is nachyata, right? Where you basically deduct X each year. You say set from the start. Each year is against, right? Is an X number of X amount of money is going to be deducted. That works if you're not a Talmid Chacham. If you're Talmid Chacham, then you would have to do it with kitsuta, where let's just assume you would do, right? Especially if you say kitsuta is asur, then at least maybe the second version would work 5 years of nachyata, the rest exact amount. Then if you don't even think that's allowed, then you're going to have to come up with this other method for Talmidei Chachamim, because we've left nothing for them. Kimashkanta de surah. They could do it the way they do collaterals in surah, which is Syria. Dekatu behachi. They were right in the agreement. Okay, in these cases, none of this was written in the agreement. They were right in the agreement the following. B'mishlam shanya ilin, at the end of X number of years, tepuk ara da below kesef. You basically say at the end of 8 years, 10 years, whatever it is, instead of deducting $100 a year, okay, let's say to 10 years, you say from the start, at the end of 10 years, whatever happens, the land reverts back to the lovan, which is basically like saying nachyata, but nachyata you didn't agree with from the beginning. It wasn't part of the whole contract. In surah, they would write it into the contract. In 10 years, the land reverts back to you automatically if you haven't paid me the loan. then they're allowed to take and use the produce. Okay, and that way, even Talmidei Chachamim could do it, and obviously anyone else could do it in this way. Okay, now I just want to go back for a minute, which is, what about an atra de lo masalke? The Gemara didn't really explain this, but what's obvious to the Gemara, and we're going to talk about this in another minute, we're going to compare an atra de masalke, atra de lo masalke for other issues, but I want to be clear about this. In a place where the lova can't kick you off the land, okay, can't kick me off as the borrower, as the lender who now has this land, if they can't kick me off, it's as if I bought the land. If I bought the land, there's no rebate problem at all, no interest. No interest problem. I can eat all the payroll because the land is mine for those years. So you don't even need any of this. This is all in an atra de masalka. In an atra de lo, because then the land is only partially mine. If the land is fully owned by me for those 10 years, then it's fully owned by me. I can do whatever I want with it. And I don't have a problem of interest whatsoever. So that's why this was only asked for atra de masalka. So now Rav Papa, Rav Huna, Rav Yoshua, Amrit, Rabbanit, this is going to be a good review because they're going to talk about different ramifications for the difference between masalka and lo masalka in terms of ownership. Since atra de masalka, a place where the lova can kick me off whenever they want, it's not owned by me. I don't own the land. All I have is rights to the produce, again, in a way that's permitted. But assuming we came up with a permitted way, I have rights to the produce, but not to the land. Therefore, okay, if I owe someone money, they can't collect it from this land because I don't own the land. I just own the produce, but I don't own the land. So they can't collect from that land. If I die and leave, now what do I leave? I leave the rights to the produce to my children. But the firstborn doesn't get double portion of the produce until the person gets back, right? Gives back the money. Because a bechor, a firstborn, only gets rights to things that are mine, fully mine, that I have full rights to. Then they'll get a double portion. But I don't have full rights to this, so they won't get a double portion of this. And shvi'it meshamatata. In the Shemitah year comes, this loan is canceled. Now, there's a big halacha that you might remember this. We learned it in Gittin when we learned about Shemitah. Shemitah year cancels loans, but not if, there's two exceptions. One of them is if I already collected an item for collateral, because it's as if I collected the loan already. So then Shvi'it doesn't cancel it because it's as if there's no loan, even though there still is a loan. But technically, it's as if I collected it. But that's only if I have something that's mine. Basically, if I take your watch and you don't pay me back, I keep your watch. If it's a place to masalka, I don't own that property. So this mashkon is not the same. It's not like I have a watch, which I can just keep. It's land. I don't have rights to the land. So because you can kick me off the land at any point, it's not like the loan was collected. If it's not like the loan was collected yet, then Shvi cancels the loan. Uba'atra de lo masalke, and here's going to be the reverse. Since I own the property fully for those years, Baal Chov govehemenu, the Baal Chov can take the land. As if I owe someone money, they can take it from this land. Now, obviously, when the borrower pays back the land, it'll have to go, pays back the money, it'll have to go back to them. But they have full rights that they can collect that land in the meantime for what I owe them. Ubechorno telbo pishnayim. My firstborn can get double portion because it's mine right now. And ain't shvi'it mishamatita, because it's as if I collected it because it's mine. And therefore, shvi'it doesn't cancel the loan because there is no loan to cancel, so to speak, right, in the world of Shemitah. Another issue. This is a different issue. If you could kick me off the land at any point, at the moment you kick me off the land, you pay me the money, you kick me off the land, you get not only the land, even dates that have just fallen onto my mats. I have mats on the floor to catch my dates. Even things that have just fallen, you can keep. You can take. But if I put them in a basket, then I already acquired them. You can't take them. But if they just fell on the mats, you can't. However, there's a debate about this because Lamanda Amar, if I go into your store and I put stuff into my basket, I bring my own basket, right? Like there's women who bring shopping wagons, their own shopping wagons into the store, right? If you bring your own shopping wagon into the store and you put it in there, it's as if it's yours. Because remember, Mashiach's kona, not money, right? So if you hold this, a debate about this, but if I'm in your property, your store, and I use my own vessel, some people say I acquired it already. So if you hold that way, then if they fell on my mats that were in your property, because in the end, right, you come and take it back, well, they're still mine because I acquired them already from them falling on my mats. You just get the ones that are still in the tree, but not the ones that fell on my mats. And therefore, even if I didn't put it in a basket, I acquired it. Pshita, it's obvious, but atra de misalke va'amar lo mistalak. And now we're talking about a different issue. Again, the same basic idea, though, the same distinctions here. If it's a place where you can kick me off at any time, and then I say, but I want to do differently, lo mistalakna. I'm not going to let you kick me off the land whenever you want. And what happened? Well, I gave you money. Now, remember, money is kone, in land, not in movables. I basically can say, I'm not going with the minhag hamakom. And because I gave you money for this loan and you gave me land, we view this as if I acquired the land. So that's a kinyan. And the land is mine until you return all, right, until the date of the loan comes up. I'm sorry, it's adra de misalke. So, but I said, lo mistalakna. And therefore, I get the land until the date of the loan comes up and you pay me back. Because I said, lo mistalakna, and I gave you money. But ba'atra de lo misalke, va'amar mistalakna, mine. If it's a place where you can't kick me off the land, but I say, I don't care, you can kick me off the land. Now, there's no kinyan here because what am I saying? I'm trying not to have a kinyan. I'm trying to say, I don't want to acquire the land, but all it was is my word alone that changes it from the typical minhag of what was going on in my neighborhood. So the question is, if I want to change my mind, can I just revert back? Or did I commit with words? How serious is my commitment with words? Do I need to do some sort of handkerchief raising as a kinyan sudar to basically say, I'm serious, and once I do a kinyan, I can't change my mind? Or since it was just speech alone, right? Do I need to do a kinyan? Or do we say, no, it's just speech. If I didn't do a kinyan, it's nothing. Or do we say, no. By word, I committed myself. So we're going to have a Rav Papa Amar lo tzarich lemiknei, Rav Sheish Breid Rav Yidi Amar tzarich lemiknei. We have a machloket, and halchata b'halacha is tzarich lemiknei. If you didn't do any sort of kinyan and it's just your word alone, you can change your mind about it. Amar, last thing for today. If you said, Ezav aite zuze lo achil. If you come to me and say, listen, and we're talking about a place where you could kick me off the land, and you come and say, I'm about to pay you back. I'm going to get my money and I'm paying you back. I have money in my house. I'm going to get it. I'm done. I can't eat payroll anymore because at that point, it's basically yours because you told me you're bringing the money. Obviously, if you don't bring the money, then it'll revert back. But right when I hear that, I can't eat anymore. If you say, listen, I got to go and find some money and bring it to you, well then, Ravina Amar Achil, Marzutra Bered, Mary Amar Lo Achil. If you're planning to pay it back, but you don't have the money in hand, there's a debate whether I can still eat payroll or not. As you can imagine why there's a debate, right? Because you don't have the money in hand, who knows how long it will take you. And Hilchata Lo Achil, the fact is we paskin, you can't eat the land. Okay, we'll stop here for today. What we basically saw today, I'll do a quick review, which is we started with this Rav Nachman and the mechila b'ta'ut. Is it mechila really in a sale? We had some question with ona'ah. We also had the aylonit, which he disproved, right? He answered his question, and we said neither really is good proof. Then we went into this woman who asked about the neighbor, and then the issue, can she pay rope because the relative, right, buying the land, is she allowed to pay rope? And from there, we got into this whole discussion about when you take land as collateral, how, right, it's not even, can you eat the fruits? Really, it seems it's a problem to eat the fruits because it's ribit. But the rabbis try to say there must be some way to be able to eat fruits, and then we distinguish between a place where you own it really because they can't kick you off the land, or a place where you don't really own it, and yet we're still going to come up with a way. And there we saw all these different possibilities. Nachyata, deduct, you can deduct things, how really it can be done. And we had this higher standard for Talmudei Chachamim, and only the Shiur, maybe perhaps only the Mashkanta Desura works if you explicitly state it. Or we had the Kitsuta, which is a possibility it might work, of different ways that you could actually continue to eat payroll. And then we just discussed more distinctions between Atra de Masalka, Atra de lo Masalka, and other ramifications of the fact that one is really acquired by you and the other is not. Okay, with that, we'll finish for today. A bit of a complicated topic, also just a lot of new concepts and a lot of new things that we haven't discussed until now, which makes it a little bit more complicated. Wishing everyone a good day and a good week.